They skipped a signature on the will, sir. Willow Grace's voice was barely louder than the scratch of Leo Moretti's silver pen stopping above the paper. Every man in the paneled law office froze. Martin Vale's thumb still covered the lower edge of page 7. Vivian Moretti's hand tightened on the back of Leo's chair, and Clara Grace stood behind them in her maid's black dress, already reaching for her daughter. Willow did not move away. She only pointed at the clean white space beneath the will and whispered, "The real page doesn't end empty." 3 hours earlier, the law office smelled like polished walnut, old leather, and the kind of expensive coffee no one drank while grief was in the room. Rain slid down the tall windows in slow, crooked lines, blurring the city beyond them into gray light. Leo Moretti sat at the head of the conference table in a black tailored suit, his father's antique watch resting against his wrist and the silver Moretti signet ring cold on his right hand. He had not spoken much since he arrived. Men like Leo did not fill silence because silence already belonged to them. 2 guards stood near the frosted glass doors. Martin Vale arranged the estate papers with careful fingers. Nina Cross, his young legal assistant, moved behind him with folders pressed flat against her chest. Vivian Moretti stood by the sideboard, dressed in morning black, her pearl ring catching the light each time she turned her hand. She looked like a grieving daughter. She sounded like a grieving sister. She had greeted every person in the room softly, almost kindly, as though she alone understood how fragile Leo was after the burial. Clara Grace stood near the back wall with Willow beside her, far from the table, far from the leather chairs. Clara had worked in the Moretti house for 11 years. She had polished the silver, folded the linens, learned which doors never opened after midnight, and taught Willow to keep her hands clasped when adults were speaking. Today she had been asked to bring a sealed envelope from the old house, then stay in case Mr. Vale needed anything else. Stay meant stand. Stay meant do not sit with family. Willow understood that without anyone saying it. Her small blue hair clip had slipped slightly to one side, and she kept touching it with 2 fingers whenever the room became too quiet. In the pocket of her faded coat, she carried the hospital envelope her mother had told her never to lose. Willow did not know all the words inside it. She knew only the shape of the folded paper, the crease beneath the word Grace, and the place where 3 signatures were supposed to sit like 3 fence posts at the bottom of a page. Martin began reading. His voice was smooth, practiced, almost soothing. Properties, accounts, restaurant holdings, port-adjacent logistics interests, a family charitable instrument to be reorganized under the discretion of surviving blood relatives. At that line, Clara's fingers tightened around the seam of her dress. Willow felt it because her own hand was tucked into her mother's. Vivian glanced toward Martin, then away so quickly most people would have missed it. Leo did not, but he said nothing. Not yet. Nina crossed behind the table and placed a cream-colored file folder beside Martin's elbow. For 1 second, before she turned it over, Willow saw the label printed across the tab. Supplemental page 7, trusty language. Then Nina flipped the folder face down and slid it beneath another stack. Willow looked up at her mother. Clara's face had gone still in a way Willow had seen only twice before. Once at Harbor Memorial Hospital, and once the night she had taken the old envelope from a kitchen drawer and said, "If anyone ever reads Mr. Moretti's will without the last line, you tell Leo." Not Vivian. Not the lawyer. Leo. Martin reached page 7. He did not pause. He read faster. His thumb pressed along the lower edge of the paper, flattening it against the table. The page looked too clean at the bottom, too white, as if a sentence had been swallowed and the paper had been taught not to complain. Leo leaned back slightly, eyes lowered, listening with the dead calm of a man who had survived too many rooms by trusting no one in them. Vivian stepped closer behind him. "Almost done," she murmured. "Father wanted this handled without theatrics." Martin nodded and turned the page. Before Willow could see the bottom clearly, Clara's nails dug into her palm. Willow felt her mother let go of her hand. The release scared her more than the guards. When Martin finished, he placed a confirmation sheet in front of Leo and pushed the silver pen forward. "Just an acknowledgement that the will was read in full," he said. Vivian's voice came softer still. Sign it, Leo. We can grieve after this. Leo picked up the pen. The room seemed to lean toward his hand. Willow looked at the closed folder, then at page 7 lying half under Martin's palm, then at the hospital envelope pressing against her ribs from inside her coat. She remembered her mother's voice. She remembered the crease below Grace. She remembered 3 signatures. Leo lowered the pen. That was when Willow stepped out from behind Clara's skirt and pointed at the place Martin's thumb refused to leave. The smallest finger in the room aimed at the blankiest part of the most expensive piece of paper on the table. Martin's smile did not disappear. It only stopped reaching his eyes. Vivian's pearl ring scraped once against the leather chair. Leo's pen hovered above the confirmation line, unmoving. And beneath Martin Vale's thumb, at the very edge of page 7, Leo saw something that should not have been there at all. The faint blue shadow of a cut-off letter. The blue shadow was so faint that, for a moment, Leo might have convinced himself it was nothing more than ink bleed from another page. A broken curve. Half a letter. The kind of mark a tired man could miss after burying his father in the morning and sitting through his estate by noon. But Leo Moretti had not survived 46 years in rooms full of polished liars by ignoring the small things. His eyes stayed on Martin Vale's thumb. "Move your hand," Leo said. Martin did not move at once. That pause was shorter than a breath, but everyone in the room felt it. Then the lawyer lifted his thumb with a mild, patient smile, as if Leo were the grieving son and he were the adult keeping order. The lower edge of the page was blank. Too blank. The faint blue curve Leo had seen ended at the paper's edge, as though the rest of the letter had been cut. Off below the line where the page now stopped. Vivian gave a soft little laugh, not cruel enough to sound like mockery, not warm enough to be comfort. "Leo," she said, "she's a child. She's frightened. Clara should have taken her home after the service." Clara's face tightened, but she lowered her eyes. Willow felt her mother's hand find her shoulder and press once, a silent plea to stop. Willow wanted to step back. She wanted the floor to open just enough for her and her mother to disappear into some hallway where no one wore black suits and no one looked at them like they had touched something clean with dirty hands. But Martin was still smiling. Nina was still holding the cream folder too close to her chest. And page 7 still ended where it should not end. Vivian moved closer to Willow, lowering herself with a grace that made the insult feel almost kind. "Sweetheart," she said, "this room is for family and legal witnesses. Grown people sometimes use words that sound important to children. It does not mean something is wrong." Willow's fingers closed around the edge of her coat pocket. She felt the old hospital envelope inside, softened by years of being hidden in drawers, folded under sweaters, tucked into places grown-ups thought children did not notice. "I'm not guessing," she said. Martin's expression warmed, the way a man smiled before correcting someone beneath him. "No one said you were lying, Willow, but memory is not evidence." Leo turned his head slightly. "You know her name." Martin's smile held. "Clara's daughter has been around the estate for years." "That is not what I asked." The room cooled. Vivian's hand tightened again on the back of Leo's chair, and the leather made a small strained sound beneath her nails. Nina lowered her eyes to the papers. Leo saw it. He saw everything now, not because he believed the little girl, but because too many adults had begun moving as if her small voice had touched a wire. Clara stepped forward. "Mr. Moretti, I'm sorry." She didn't mean to interrupt. "Then let her finish," Leo said, still watching Martin. Martin raised both hands slightly, all calm procedure and expensive restraint. "Of course, but for clarity, this is an acknowledgement of reading, not an execution of the will. Nothing is being signed away at this table. Then you won't mind leaving the page where it is." Martin's jaw worked once before the smile returned. "Naturally." Nina began gathering the duplicate packets. One by one, she slipped them into a neat stack, tapping the bottoms against the table. Willow watched the cream-colored folder vanish beneath a navy binder. On the tab, before it disappeared, the black printed words flashed again. Supplemental page 7. Trustee language. The words meant little to her except for one page. That was enough. That one, Willow whispered. Leo followed her eyes. Nina froze with her fingertips still resting on the folder. Vivian spoke before anyone could ask. Those are internal drafting materials. Mr. Vale explained there were several revisions. Father was ill for months. It was messy. Her voice trembled on the word father. Perfectly placed, perfectly timed. Clara flinched as if grief itself had been used as a weapon. Leo leaned back in his chair. Put the folder down, Ms. Cross. Nina looked at Martin. Not at Leo. It lasted less than a second. But Leo saw that too. Martin gave the smallest nod, then turned it into a cough. Nina set the folder on the table, face down. May I? Leo asked. It was not really a question. Martin placed his palm lightly on the folder before Leo could reach it. I would advise against confusing the matter with unfiled documents. Unfiled, Leo repeated. Drafts, Martin said smoothly. Non-binding, irrelevant to the reading. Willow looked at the folder, then at Martin's hand. If it's not important, she said, her voice smaller now. Why did she turn it over? No one answered. Rain tapped against the windows. Somewhere beyond the frosted glass, a phone vibrated and went silent. Vivian straightened, her face still composed, but the softness left her eyes. Clara, she said without looking away from Leo. Your daughter is upset. Take her outside. The words were polite. The meaning was not. Clara's arm came around Willow, but Willow did not move. She pulled the hospital envelope from her coat pocket just enough for Leo to see its worn corner and the blue handwriting on the front. Clara Grace, Harbor Memorial. Leo's gaze dropped to the envelope, and something in him stilled. Not softened, stilled. Like a man hearing a lock turn in a room he thought had no doors. Where did you get that? He asked. Clara swallowed. Vivian's head turned too quickly. Martin's fingers pressed harder against the cream folder. Willow held the envelope with both hands, careful not to wrinkle it, and said, Mom keeps it because your father told her not to let anyone read page 7 without the last line. Leo did not reach for it. Not yet. His eyes moved from the envelope to Martin, from Martin to Nina, from Nina to Vivian's hand still gripping the chair. Then he noticed the smallest mark on the leather beneath Vivian's fingers. For fresh crescent dents, cut deep into the black hide, as if his grieving sister had been holding on not to comfort him, but to keep herself from stopping the child with both hands. The 4 crescent dents in the leather did not look like grief. They looked like restraint. Leo stared at them for one silent second, then lifted his eyes to Vivian's hand. She noticed him noticing and released the chair as if the leather had burned her. You're making this worse, she said softly. But this time she was not speaking to Willow. She was speaking to Clara. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. Years of working in houses where one wrong word could cost a paycheck had taught her how to swallow whole sentences before they reached daylight. Willow saw her mother's throat move. She saw Martin's palm still resting on the cream folder. She saw Nina shift her weight as though the floor had become uneven beneath her heels. The hospital envelope trembled in Willow's hands. Not because she wanted it to, but because 8-year-old fingers were not built for rooms like this. Leo reached out slowly. May I see it? Willow looked up at her mother first. Clara gave the smallest nod. Only then did Willow place the worn envelope on the table, sliding it forward with both hands. She did not throw it down. She did not make a scene. She pushed it gently, as if the paper inside could be hurt by roughness. The envelope stopped inches from Leo's ring. On the front, written in blue ink that had faded at the edges, were the words Clara Grace, Harbor Memorial. Below that was a date from 6 years earlier, and beneath the date, in smaller handwriting, a line Willow knew by sight even though she had only learned to read it in pieces. Keep with page 7. Do not file with Vale. The room changed when Leo read the last 4 words. Not loudly. No one gasped. But something cold passed across the table, touching each adult one by one. Martin's smile thinned. Nina looked down at the floor. Vivian folded her hands in front of her black dress with too much care. Leo opened the envelope. Inside was the folded photocopy Willow had carried for so long that its creases had become soft as cloth. It was not clean. A faint brownish ring marked one corner where a hospital coffee cup must have sat too close. The lower edge was slightly warped, as if it had once gotten wet and dried under a book. There was a crease running across the bottom third of the page, just under the word Grace. Willow leaned forward before she could stop herself. "That's the fold," she whispered. "Mom always folds it there." Martin gave a small, patient exhale. "Mr. Moretti, I must insist. Photocopies pulled from hospital envelopes do not override properly filed estate documents." "You'll insist when I ask you to," Leo said. His voice stayed level, but Clara's eyes flicked toward him. So did the guards. Leo unfolded the paper fully and placed it beside the page Martin had read. He did not touch the text yet. He studied the shape first, the way a man studies a doorway before entering a room where someone may be waiting with a knife. Both pages had the same header. Both had the same typed paragraph beginning near the top. Both carried the printed mark page 7 of 9. But on Clara's copy, the number sat almost a quarter-inch lower than it did on Martin's page. Willow pointed, careful to keep her finger off the ink. "That 7 is in the wrong place." Vivian's mouth curved in sympathy. "Sweetheart, copies shift. Machines do that." "Not the fold," Willow said. "The fold is under Grace." For the first time, Martin's eyes moved too. Quickly. Not to Willow. To the bottom of Clara's photocopy. Leo followed the look. There, just above the crease, were 2 words printed cleanly in the same legal font as the rest of the will. Guardian Trustee. The line beneath it was partly faded but readable. Clara Grace. And beneath that were 3 signature spaces. The first held Leo's father's name in blue ink. The second held a notary mark. The third was lower, close to the bottom edge. The place Martin's page ended in empty whiteness. Leo did not speak. His thumb rested against the edge of the old photocopy, and his face became so still that even Vivian stopped pretending to smile. Willow remembered what her mother had told her. Not all of it. Not the long parts about trusts and witnesses and court papers. Just the simple part a child could carry. "Mom said there were 3 fence posts," Willow said. "If one is gone, the gate is open." Martin let out a soft laugh, but it arrived half a beat late. A charming metaphor, but hardly legal analysis. Clara's cheeks burned. "I never taught her to say that in here." "No," Vivian said, and her voice softened into something almost pitying. "But children repeat what anxious parents rehearse." Willow looked at her then. She was afraid of Vivian in the quiet way children are afraid of adults who never raise their voices. But she also remembered her mother crying over the kitchen sink with that page open beside a pile of unpaid hospital bills. She remembered Clara saying, "If they make me sound greedy, you remember I did not ask for this." So Willow shook her head. She didn't rehearse. She cried. The words landed harder than Willow meant them to. Clara closed her eyes. Vivian's face did not change, but she adjusted the cuff of her sleeve with one sharp movement, hiding a tiny smear of blue near her wrist. Nina saw it too. Leo saw Nina seeing it. Martin reached toward Clara's photocopy. "May I examine that?" Leo placed 2 fingers on the page first, pinning it to the table. No, Martin's hand stopped. "Mr. Moretti, if you intend to compare documents, chain of custody matters. Then you should be pleased I'm not letting it leave my sight." Leo turned to Willow. "You said your mother kept it because my father told her to." Willow nodded. "He said not to let anyone read page 7 without the last line." "Did you hear him say that?" Leo asked. Willow hesitated, because lying would have been easier and maybe safer. "No, sir. I was little. I heard Mom say it after." Vivian's shoulders relaxed a fraction, as if she had been waiting for that weakness. There. Hearsay from a frightened child. But Leo was not looking at Vivian. He was looking at the hospital envelope again. At the date. At the handwritten warning. At the instruction not to file with Vale. Then he looked back at Martin. "Why would my father write your name on something he didn't want filed with you?" Martin's face held, but the color beneath it shifted. A small thing. Almost nothing. Just the brief draining of warmth from a man who had expected a child to break under adult words. Before he could answer, Willow touched the coffee ring on the old photocopy and said, "That stain is on Mom's page because Mr. Moretti spilled coffee at the hospital. Mom said he laughed because it looked like a halo." Clara opened her eyes fast. "Willow." But it was too late. Leo had gone still again. Not because the story was sentimental. Because on the lower corner of Martin Vale's clean page, where no coffee stain should have mattered, there was a faint copied outline of the same ring, cropped in half, as if someone had scanned Clara's stained page and cut away the part they were most afraid to leave. The half-cropped coffee ring sat on Martin Vale's clean page like a ghost someone had forgotten to erase. For several seconds, no one said anything. The rain kept tapping the glass. The guards by the frosted doors stood straighter, not because they understood the will, but because they understood Leo Moretti's silence. Leo did not look angry. That was what made the room colder. Angry men wasted heat. Leo only took off his antique watch, laid it beside Clara's photocopy, and said, "Put them under the glass." Martin's smile returned too smoothly. "Mr. Moretti, document comparison is not something we do by eye during an estate reading." "Then we'll start by eye," Leo said, "since that is apparently how a child noticed what my lawyer did not." The words did not raise his voice, but they lowered everyone else's. Nina moved toward the document camera near the credenza, a sleek black machine used for contracts and property maps. Her heels clicked too quickly against the hardwood. Vivian exhaled as though managing a younger brother's grief had become exhausting. "Leo, please. Father hated scenes. You know that." He also hated missing pages. Leo slid Martin's page toward the glass, then looked at Willow. "You don't touch the papers. You only tell me when the corners match." Willow nodded. Her hands were still wrapped around the worn hospital envelope, pressing it to her chest as if it were a small animal she had promised to protect. Clara stood behind her, face pale, lips parted around apologies she no longer knew how to say. Vivian saw that and used it. "Clara, this is cruel to the child," she said softly. "You brought her into a room full of adults and grief and legal language. Let her sit outside. I'll have someone bring her water." It sounded generous. It sounded almost maternal. But Willow heard the door inside the sentence. Outside meant away from the page. Away meant quiet. Quiet meant the blank space would win. Willow looked at the empty chair beside the wall, the one no one had offered her mother. Then she lifted her chin just enough. "I'm not thirsty, ma'am." A small silence followed. Leo's eyes flicked toward her, and for the first time there was something like approval there, though not softness. He turned back to Nina. "Camera on." Nina tapped the screen. The document camera glowed, and the image of Martin's page appeared on the wall-mounted monitor. Its legal text looked enormous now, black words floating over white paper. Nina adjusted the focus. The lower edge blurred, sharpened, blurred again. "It's old equipment," she murmured. "The light can distort edges." Willow stared at the monitor. "It's higher," she said. Nina stopped. "What is?" "The 7. Willow pointed not at the paper, but at the projected corner. "On Mom's page, the 7 is lower." Martin let out a quiet breath through his nose. "Children are very good at patterns. That doesn't make them reliable witnesses." Leo placed Clara's photocopy under the camera next. The page filled the screen, yellowed slightly by age, its creases like pale scars. At the top corner, page 7 of 9 appeared. Leo asked Nina to freeze the image. Then he had Martin's page placed over it, aligning the headers. The room watched as the two images were compared on the monitor. The first lines matched. The paragraph spacing matched. Even the coffee ring, faint and cropped on Martin's version, sat in the same lower corner like a half-buried confession. But when Nina adjusted the overlay, the bottom of Martin's page ended almost exactly one line above the place where Clara's copy continued. "There," Willow said. "One word. No drama. No trembling. Just there." Martin stepped closer, hands folded behind his back now because Leo had made it clear he would not touch the page. A photocopy can shrink or stretch depending on feeder alignment. A feeder doesn't move hole punches, Leo said. He leaned forward and tapped the left margin with the back of his ring, not touching the ink. The projected image showed 3 round punch marks on Clara's copy, old and slightly frayed at the edges. On Martin's page, the holes sat higher, clean, newer, almost too perfect. Willow tilted her head. "Those holes aren't tired," she said. For the first time, one of the guards looked down to hide the corner of a smile. Vivian did not. Martin's expression hardened by a fraction. "Mr. Moretti, with respect, we are drifting into theater." Leo looked at him.
"No."
"Theater is when everyone in a room pretends not to see the same thing." Nina's hand slipped on the camera controls, and the image jumped. In the jump, the monitor flashed the bottom of the cream folder lying near Martin's elbow. Its tab was still partly visible. Supplemental page 7, trusty language. Vivian moved at once, not dramatically, only a small graceful step, placing herself between Leo and the folder. "If you want a formal review, I'll arrange one tomorrow with the family board present," she said. "Tonight we should stop before Clara is accused of something worse than confusion." Clara flinched again. Willow felt it like a tug in her own chest. But Leo did not miss the shape of the sentence. Before Clara was accused. Not if. Before. "No one is leaving with paper," he said. Martin's face cooled. "That may create custody issues. Then write them down." Leo turned to the guard nearest the door. "Lock this room." Politely, the guard stepped outside, spoke low to someone in the hall, and the frosted door clicked shut. Vivian's pearl ring rotated once around her finger. Nina lowered her hand from the camera, but as she did, a blue smear showed briefly along the side of her thumb, the same thin color as the writing on Clara's envelope. She noticed Willow looking and curled her hand into a fist. Willow did not speak right away. She waited until Leo turned back toward the screen. Then she said softly, "Miss Nina has the same blue on her hand." Nina laughed too quickly. "I work with pens all day." "But you said the copier history was gone," Willow said. "You said it before anyone asked." The room went still again. Leo's gaze moved slowly from Willow to Nina. "When did you learn the copier history was gone?" Nina opened her mouth. Martin answered for her. "This morning, during routine preparation." It was a clean answer. Reasonable. Almost perfect. Vivian's shoulders loosened as if the floor had returned beneath her. But then the document camera, still running, gave a soft mechanical beep and displayed an automatic message across the monitor. "Last scanned item recovered from temporary memory." The thumbnail was small, grainy, and pale, but everyone could see enough. It was page 7, uncropped with 3 signature lines at the bottom. The recovered thumbnail stayed on the monitor for only a second before Nina reached for the control panel. Leo's hand moved first. He did not grab her. He did not raise his voice. He simply placed 2 fingers on the edge of the machine, close enough that Nina's hand stopped in midair. "Don't touch it." The words were quiet, but they landed harder than a shout. Nina's eyes flicked to Martin, then to Vivian, then down at the polished table as if the wood could tell her where to look. On the monitor, the tiny cached image glowed in pale gray. Page 7, complete, uncropped, with 3 signature lines at the bottom. The 3rd line was too small to read from across the room, but its shape was unmistakable. 3 lines, not 2. Willow held the hospital envelope tighter against her chest. She did not smile. She looked almost frightened by being right. Clara's hand hovered behind her daughter's shoulder without touching, as if she wanted to pull Willow away from the table, and also knew the table had become the only place where their truth could breathe. Martin recovered first. "Temporary memory is unreliable," he said. "These machines store previews, corrupted scans, partial drafts. It proves nothing about the admitted will." Leo turned his head just enough to look at him. "Then you won't object to preserving it." Martin's lips parted. A lawyer's answer formed behind his eyes and died before it reached his mouth. Leo looked to the guard by the frosted door. "Call my outside counsel, not the family firm. Have them send a digital evidence tech." Until then, the machine stays powered on, photographed and watched. The guard nodded once and took out his phone. Vivian's expression softened again, the mask settling back over bone. Leo, you're treating your father's last wishes like a crime scene. Someone else started that. He removed his own phone, photographed the monitor, then photographed the machine's serial number, the page on the glass, Claire's photocopy, and Martin's clean version. Each camera click sounded indecently loud in the quiet room. Nina swallowed. Willow noticed the movement because she was watching Nina's neck, not her face. Grown-ups could make faces lie. Their throats were not as good at it. There's a book, Willow said. Leo stopped with the phone still in his hand. What book? Willow pointed toward the credenza where Nina had been standing before the reading began. A sign book. Miss Nina wrote in it with the blue pen. Before Mr. Vale started reading, Nina gave a tiny shake of her head. That's just the document intake log. It's office procedure. Bring it, Leo said. Martin stepped forward. Mr. Moretti, internal office logs are privileged administrative materials. Leo's eyes did not leave him. My father's will is being questioned in my father's lawyer's office, using my father's documents, in a room my family paid for. Bring the book. Nina went to the credenza. Her hand hovered over two drawers before choosing the lower one. That choice made Leo's gaze narrow. She pulled out a black ledger with worn corners, old-fashioned and heavy. The kind of thing kept because older lawyers trusted ink more than passwords. She set it on the table. Not in front of Leo, in front of Martin. Leo slid it away from Martin with 2 fingers. Open it to today. Nina did. The page smelled faintly of paper dust and pen ink. Entries lined the columns in careful handwriting. Courier deliveries, estate packet copies, witness certifications, document return receipts. Then Leo saw it. 8:42 a.m. supplemental page 7 delivered NC. In the next column, written smaller, were the words VM private packet. The ink had smeared at the end of packet, leaving a blue crescent on the paper. Willow leaned closer, standing on her toes to see. That's the same blue, she whispered. Martin gave a controlled laugh. NC is obviously Ms. Cross. VM means verified material. It's a standard notation. Vivian nodded almost before he finished. Exactly. Verified material. This is what I mean, Leo. Grief makes coincidences look sinister. But Leo had already seen the problem. Martin's explanation came too quickly, and Vivian accepted it too perfectly. Nina's face had gone colorless. Verified by who? Leo asked. Martin blinked once. By the office. Which person? The team. Name one. The silence after that was not empty. It was full of things being rearranged too late. Vivian stepped closer, her perfume sharp and floral, cutting through the leather and rain. Enough. You are letting a frightened child and a housekeeper turn mourning into accusation. Clara lowered her head at the word housekeeper, but Willow stepped half an inch in front of her mother. It was not brave in a grand way. It was the smallest shield a child could make with her body. Her name is Clara Grace, Willow said. Leo looked at the little girl, then at his sister. Not with rage, with measurement. Vivian had said. Housekeeper the way some people said evidence when they meant inconvenience. Leo photographed the ledger entry. Then he took a clean envelope from the conference cabinet, slid the ledger page under the camera without tearing it out, and ordered the guard to record the room continuously. This log stays here. The machine stays on. No one touches the packets. Martin's voice cooled. You're implying misconduct without foundation. Leo looked down at the line again, VM private packet. He thought of Vivian standing behind his chair, guiding his grief toward the signature line. He thought of his father's old warning hidden in a hospital envelope and the phrase "do not file with Vale." Then he noticed the ledger's time. 8:42 a.m. The funeral mass had not begun until 9. Vivian had told him she was at the church by 8:30, waiting beside their father's casket. Leo lifted his eyes to his sister, and for the first time all afternoon, he did not see the woman who had held his hand at the cemetery. He saw someone who had needed a private packet delivered before the dead man was even buried. The private packet had arrived before the body was even buried. Leo kept his eyes on Vivian long enough for the silence to become a question no one wanted him to ask. Vivian did not look away. That was one of her gifts. She could stand in the center of a lie and make stillness look like dignity. "I left the church briefly," she said before Leo spoke. "Father's memorial cards were delayed. I handled it so you wouldn't have to." It was a reasonable answer. Clean. Useful. Too useful. Leo looked down at the ledger again, at 8:42 a.m., at VM private packet, at the blue smear drying into the paper like a bruise. "Who brought the memorial cards?" he asked. Vivian's face did not change, but Nina's did. One blink too many. Martin closed the ledger with 2 fingers as though tidying the room could tidy the truth. "Mr. Moretti, this is precisely why estate matters should not be conducted in an emotional condition." Leo looked at the closed book. "Open it." Martin did. Slowly. The rain moved harder against the windows now, tapping the glass in thin, uneven lines. For a moment it was the only sound in the room besides the old watch on the table, ticking beside Clara's photocopy. Tick. The dead man's time. Tick. The missing line. Tick. The child holding a hospital envelope like it weighed more than the estate itself. Willow looked at the envelope in her hands and then at her mother. "Mom didn't want anything," she said. The words were not loud enough for everyone at the far end of the table, but Leo heard them. "She said if people know, they'll say she wanted money. But she didn't. She just didn't want the paper to disappear." Clara shut her eyes. "Baby." "It's true," Willow said. "You said promises don't belong to rich people only." That sentence landed in a different part of Leo than the evidence had. Not his grief. Not his anger. Somewhere older and more damaged. His father had said something like that once, years ago, after a dockworker's widow had come to the back entrance of the Moretti house with a hospital bracelet in a plastic bag and no lawyer willing to take her call. Leo had been younger then, harder in a cheaper way, still learning how to turn away without looking like he was turning away. His father had watched him refuse the meeting and said, "One day you'll find out silence is the most expensive thing this family buys." Leo had forgotten that voice, or he had buried it where convenient men buried inconvenient fathers. Clara's hands shook as she reached for the hospital envelope. "Mr. Moretti," she said, and the formal words sounded painful in her mouth. "Your father gave me that copy at Harbor Memorial. I was working nights then, cleaning rooms on the 4th floor, sometimes sitting with patients who had no family there. There was a man brought in from the docks. He was scared to give his name. Your father came after midnight. No guards. No Vivian. No lawyer. Just him and that watch." Leo did not move, but his eyes dropped to the antique watch. "What man?" Clara swallowed. Vivian spoke first. "This is outrageous. We are not turning father's will into gossip from a hospital floor." "What man?" Leo repeated, softer. Clara looked at Willow, then at the guards, then at the long polished table that had never made space for her. "A witness. He said there were families owed money. Real money. Not charity. Not hush money. Compensation. Your father said he had let the port business become something he no longer recognized." Martin's voice cut in, crisp and legal. "Alleged statements by a deceased party, made in a medical facility, recalled years later by an employee with a financial interest in the estate." "She has no financial interest," Leo said. "That line makes her trustee, not beneficiary." Martin stopped. It was the first true mistake he had made. Not the words, but the speed of them. He understood the difference too well for a man who claimed the missing language was irrelevant. Leo saw it. So did Vivian. Her eyes shifted to Martin, warning him back into shape. Clara reached into the envelope again. Willow helped her because the opening had softened and the flap always caught on the old fold. From behind the photocopy, Clara drew out a small laminated hospital card, yellowed at the edges. It read Harbor Memorial Witness Intake, Grace. On the back, in blue handwriting faded almost silver, were 8 words. If they erased the page, show Leo the place. Leo took the card at last. His fingers covered the edge where the laminate had cracked. He stared at the handwriting, and the room seemed to draw away from him. It was his father's hand. Not the formal signature from contracts, not the bold flourish from checks, but the private script from birthday cards and margin notes, the writing Leo had not seen since before grief became paperwork. Vivian's voice lowered. Leo, look at me. Father was medicated. He was paranoid at the end. Martin can explain the drafts. We can review everything tomorrow without humiliating Clara further. Clara looked as if the word humiliating had struck her across the mouth. Willow stepped closer to her mother again. Not in front of Leo this time, but beside Clara, shoulder against her hip. She's already embarrassed, Willow said. You keep saying her name like it's dirt. No one corrected the child. Even Martin looked away. Leo turned the hospital card over once more. Where is the original file? He asked. Martin said, archived. Vivian said, protected. Nina whispered, restricted. 3 answers. 1 question. Leo looked at Nina. Restricted by whom? Nina pressed her lips together. Martin's hand moved a fraction toward her arm, then stopped when Leo's eyes followed it. Leo picked up his phone and made 1 call. Sal, he said when his consigliera answered. Quietly, I need Harbor Memorial intake records tied to the Grace file, any trust instrument connected to port compensation, and the office camera from Vale's conference floor. Use outside counsel. Not Martin's people. Vivian's gaze sharpened. She had heard enough to understand that Leo had changed sides, but not enough to know how much he knew. Leo ended the call before she could object. No police? Martin asked, trying to sound relieved and concerned at the same time. Leo looked at him. Not yet. The 2 words made the room colder than any threat. Then Sal called back sooner than anyone expected. Leo put the phone to his ear, listened, and said nothing for a long time. The watch ticked beside the will. Rain slid down the glass. Willow's blue hair clip trembled slightly because Clara's hand was shaking against her shoulder. Leo lowered the phone. His face had not broken, but something behind it had. The notary attached to the original trust, he said. Eyes fixed on Vivian now. Died 3 weeks ago at Pier 41. Clara covered her mouth. Nina looked like she might be sick. Vivian whispered, accidents happen at the docks. Leo stared at his sister, and in that moment he remembered every warning he had dismissed as bitterness. Every servant who had gone quiet when Vivian entered a room. Every sealed family matter he had signed without reading because she told him it was cleaner that way. The truth did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like a door unlocking inside him. He had spent years suspecting enemies outside the family, while the woman behind his chair had learned exactly how to make him look away. Leo did not move after the call ended. That was what frightened Vivian most. If he had slammed the phone down, if he had cursed, if he had ordered every guard in the building to drag someone into the hallway, she would have known how to perform grief, outrage, offense. But Leo only set the phone beside his father's watch and looked at the rain crawling down the window as though the answer had already been written there. Then he said, "We're taking 10 minutes." Martin blinked. "A recess." "A pause," Leo said. "For dignity." Vivian's shoulders eased by half an inch. The word dignity belonged to her. She knew how to use it. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's wise." Leo did not answer. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and turned to the guards. "No one leaves the floor. No paper leaves this room. No one touches the document camera." His tone stayed even, almost bored, but the 2 guards straightened as if he had shouted. Martin reached for his leather briefcase. Leo's eyes moved to it. Martin's hand stopped on the handle. "My notes," he said. "We'll wait." Nina's phone vibrated on the table. Once, twice. The sound was small, trapped under the weight of the room. No one touched it. Willow looked at the screen before Nina flipped it face down. She could not read the whole message, only 2 words before they vanished. "Still there?" She did not know who sent it. She did know Nina's thumb had trembled when she hit it. Leo saw Willow looking. He said nothing. That was how the trap began. Vivian believed the pause was for her. Martin believed it was to regain control. Nina believed it was a chance to breathe. But Leo had already shifted the room around them without raising his voice. He told Clara to sit. Not against the wall. Not near the service credenza. At the table. Clara hesitated so long the order almost seemed more painful than being ignored. Mr. Moretti, I'm fine standing. I didn't ask if you were fine, Leo said. Sit down, Miss Grace. The name landed with more force than any apology could have. Clara slowly pulled out a chair. Willow climbed onto the seat beside her, her shoes not reaching the floor. The hospital envelope lay in front of them now, no longer hidden in a coat pocket. Leo placed a blank legal pad and a pencil near Willow. Can you draw the room as it was before I came in? Martin gave a quiet scoff. Mr. Moretti, surely we're not relying on a child's drawing. We're relying on memory, Leo said. Adults have already made a mess of documents. Willow looked at the pencil. I'm not good at drawing people. Don't draw people, Leo said. Draw where things were. That she could do. She drew the long table first, then the door, then the credenza, then the document camera like a square spider with one arm. She marked where her mother had stood by the wall. She marked Martin's chair with an M because that letter was easy. She marked Nina near the lower drawer. She marked Vivian behind Leo's chair. Then she paused and drew a tall vase of white lilies sitting on the side table near the corner. That was moved, she said. Leo leaned closer. When? Before you came in. Miss Nina moved it because Miss Vivian said the flowers looked better there. Vivian gave a tired smile. I adjusted flowers for my father's reading. Is that evidence now? Willow shook her head. No, ma'am. But after she moved it, the little red light on the wall camera went away. The room became very quiet. Even the rain seemed to thin against the glass. Leo turned his head, just slightly, toward the corner camera above the bookcase. A tall white lily arrangement sat directly in front of it, beautiful and useless and perfectly placed. Martin exhaled through his nose. Security cameras in law offices are often decorative deterrents. Audio is restricted. Video may not even be retained. Good thing it isn't the only glass in the room, Leo said. He looked at the liquor cabinet along the opposite wall. Its dark mirrored doors reflected the conference table at an angle. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. Leo picked up his phone again. Sal. The main camera was blocked. Pull the reflection from the liquor cabinet camera across the hall, if it caught the monitor or the table. And copy the conference feed before anyone in this building remembers how to lose it. He hung up and turned back to the room. Vivian's face had lost none of its grace. But her left hand had found her pearl ring again. Around and around. Once. Twice. Martin said, This is becoming improper. Leo looked at him. Then object properly when outside counsel arrives. 10 minutes did not feel like 10 minutes. It felt like a wire being tightened. Inside the walls. Nina stood near the credenza with her hands clasped, eyes red but dry. Leo offered her a glass of water. She looked at Martin before taking it. Leo noticed. Ms. Cross, he said mildly, when you wrote VM private packet in the intake ledger, did Mr. Vale tell you what VM meant? Martin answered, I already explained. Leo raised one finger. Not high, just enough. Martin stopped. Nina swallowed. Verified material, she said. Who verified it? Leo asked. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. The phone on the table vibrated again. Still face down. Still untouched. Leo's outside counsel had not arrived yet, but Sal sent a file to Leo's phone. The download circle spun slowly. Everyone watched it without admitting they were watching. 92%. 98. Complete. Leo tapped the video. Grainy, warped footage filled his screen, reflected through dark glass. There was Nina at the table. There was Martin seated beside the folder. There was Vivian behind Leo's empty chair before the reading began, her hand resting on the lilies. Nina slid one page from the cream folder. Martin looked directly at it and did not react. Willow could not see the screen clearly, but she heard Nina make a sound, small and broken, like air leaving a punctured balloon. Leo set the phone on the table and turned it so the others could see. "Ms. Cross," he said, voice almost gentle. "I don't need you scared. I need you accurate." Nina stared at the reflection of herself removing the page. Martin's face hardened. Vivian's hand finally stopped turning the ring. And Willow, sitting beside her mother at the table now, understood from the way Vivian looked at her that the child she had tried to send outside was no longer standing alone. The child Vivian had tried to send outside was sitting at the table now, and that changed the room more than the video did. Not because Willow looked powerful. She did not. Her shoes still hung above the floor. Her blue hair clips sat crooked over one ear, and both her hands stayed wrapped around the hospital envelope as if someone might snatch it the moment she blinked. But Clara Grace sat beside her with her back straighter than before, and Leo Moretti had turned his phone so every adult could see what the dark cabinet glass had caught. Nina removing the page. Martin watching. Vivian standing near the lilies, placing beauty in front of a camera like a curtain. No one rushed to speak. That silence was the first honest thing the room had offered all day. Martin recovered by reaching for procedure. "A reflected image has limitations," he said. "Angles distort. Context is missing. No court would accept." "Stop practicing closing arguments," Leo said. His voice was not loud. Martin stopped anyway. Vivian stepped forward, not toward Leo, but toward Clara. It was subtle, almost graceful, the movement of a woman choosing the easiest throat to press. "Clara, you understand what this looks like," she said. "A document appears from your coat. Your child interrupts a legal reading. Suddenly you are named in a trust worth millions. Any reasonable person would ask who benefits." Clara's face paled, but she did not lower her eyes this time. Willow felt her mother's knee trembling under the table. She looked down at the hospital envelope and remembered the way her mother always opened it from the left side because the right corner tore if pulled too hard. "There's another paper," Willow said. The words were so small that only Leo turned at first. "Inside?" he asked. Willow nodded. "Not in the envelope. In your watch." Vivian's mask slipped for less than a heartbeat. Martin's head turned toward Leo's antique watch lying beside the photocopy. Leo did not touch it immediately. For the first time that afternoon, he looked almost unwilling. The watch had belonged to his father for 30 years. It had ticked through deals, funerals, baptisms, warnings, and the kind of private conversations men like the Morettis pretended never happened. "How would you know that?" Leo asked. Willow looked at Clara. Clara's lips trembled. "Your father showed me once," Clara said. "At Harbor Memorial. He said if the office copy vanished and the lawyer called me greedy, the number would still be with you." Leo picked up the watch. The room seemed to tighten around the movement of his fingers. The back plate opened with a soft metallic click. Inside, beneath the worn lining, was a folded strip of paper so small it looked like nothing more than dust caught under metal. Leo unfolded it with the care of a man handling a bone. Written in his father's private blue script were a file number, the name of a backup notary office in Queens, and one sentence. "Clara signs only after Leo hears the page." Leo did not breathe for a moment. His face lost color, not dramatically, not like a man pretending grief for an audience. It drained from him quietly, because the sentence was not only evidence. It was judgment. His father had expected the page to be hidden. His father had expected Clara to be accused. His father had expected Leo to need a child and a maid to make him listen. Vivian whispered, "Leo." He did not look at her. He stared at the paper until the ink seemed to pull years out of him. Servants going silent in hallways, port widows turned away by assistants, sealed envelopes he had signed because Vivian said it was cleaner, because Martin said it was standard, because power was easiest when someone else held the unpleasant details. Leo placed the strip of paper under the document camera. The sentence appeared huge on the wall. "Clara signs only after Leo hears the page." Nina covered her mouth. Martin's jaw tightened. Vivian said, "That proves father was confused." Leo finally looked at her. "No," he said. "It proves he knew us." That was when Sal's reply came through on Leo's phone. A secure video link. Leo tapped it once, and an older woman appeared on the screen, seated behind a desk stacked with file boxes. She introduced herself as a records attorney for the backup notary office. Her voice was dry, formal, impossible to charm. She confirmed the file number from the watch. She confirmed an outside copy of the trust instrument had been deposited 6 years earlier. She confirmed the controlling page 7 contained guardian trustee language naming Clara Grace, 3 signature lines, and a handwritten revision removing Leo Moretti as first trustee before the final execution. Leo's eyes shut for 1 second. That was all. 1 second in which a mafia boss could not speak because a dead man's lack of trust had become public record. Then the attorney read the note attached to the revision. Mr. Moretti requested a non-family trustee after stating his son may still choose family silence over injured families. The words did not explode. They settled. Vivian did not deny the page now. She changed targets. Clara manipulated him, she said, voice soft, deadly. She cleaned his room. She had access. She knew he was weak. Willow stood up on the chair before Clara could stop her. Not tall. Not commanding. Just visible. My mom sat with people nobody visited, she said. That's not stealing. The room went still again, but differently this time. Not because Willow had found another clue. Because she had named the thing everyone had been stepping around. Clara had been poor, not dirty. Employed, not owned. Trusted, not greedy. Leo looked from Willow to Clara, then to Vivian, and the last softness left his face. He picked up the watch paper, placed it beside Clara's photocopy, the intake ledger, and the frozen image of Nina removing the page. Then he turned to the guard at the door and spoke with the calm of a man ending an era. Bring in outside counsel. Keep the cameras rolling. No family attorney touches another page. Outside counsel entered without ceremony, and that made it worse for Vivian. No one wore a gold pin. No one bowed to the Moretti name. 2 attorneys in dark coats, a digital evidence technician carrying a sealed case, and a gray-haired notary representative from the backup office came through the frosted doors while the cameras kept recording. Leo did not move from the head of the table. Clara sat beside him now, Willow beside Clara, the hospital envelope resting between the old photocopy and the intake ledger like a small, tired witness that had finally been allowed to sit down. Martin tried one more time. This family firm has represented the Moretti estate for 23 years, he said, his voice controlled but thin. Any outside intervention should proceed through proper notice. The older attorney looked at him over her glasses. Mr. Vale, proper notice ended when a cash scan showed a materially different estate page than the one you presented for acknowledgement. She did not say it cruelly. She said it like a door locking. The evidence technician photographed everything where it lay. Martin's shortened page, Clara's folded photocopy, the blue smudged intake ledger, the hospital card, the watch paper, Leo's phone showing the reflection footage, and the document camera's recovered thumbnail. Each item was placed in a clear evidence sleeve, labeled, logged, and signed across the seal. Willow watched the process with the solemn attention of a child watching adults finally do what they should have done before asking her to be quiet. When the real outside copy was read aloud, the room did not erupt. It simply became impossible to pretend. Page 7 named Clara Grace as guardian trustee. It listed 3 signature lines. It referenced the Harbor Memorial Witness File and the Port Compensation Trust. Then came the line that made Leo look down at his own hands. His name had been written first as trustee, then crossed out by his father's hand, replaced with Clara's. The notary representative read the attached statement in a steady voice. Leo Moretti is my son, and I love him, but love is not the same as trust. Until he proves he can hear the people our family taught itself not to hear, this authority belongs to Clara Grace. Leo did not defend himself. That was the first repair. Vivian looked at him, waiting for pride to save her. It did not. Martin was removed from representation on the spot pending review by the State Bar and referral for estate fraud and evidence tampering. Nina, shaking so hard her pen scratched the paper twice, gave a recorded statement that the cream-colored packet had been delivered under Vivian's instruction and that Martin had told her the third signature was already dead. Vivian was not dragged away. Leo would not give her the theater of violence. Instead, outside counsel placed a written freeze on her access to the trust, the estate packet, and every family-controlled account tied to port compensation. She had to sign acknowledgement of preservation duties while the same guards she had treated like furniture stood watching. "Leo," she whispered, "you would shame your own blood in front of staff." Leo looked at Clara, then at Willow, then back at his sister. "No," he said. "I'm done shaming staff to protect blood." The apology came after the documents, because Leo understood by then that words without corrected records were only another kind of performance. He stood, pushed back his chair, and faced Clara in front of everyone. "Ms. Grace," he said, and the title made Clara's eyes shine before she could stop them. "My father trusted you with authority this family tried to bury. I let them make you stand at the wall while they read a document that needed your name to be whole. I was wrong." Clara covered her mouth, but she did not bow her head. Not this time. Outside counsel placed the trustee acknowledgement before her. Clara's hand trembled as she signed her full name, Clara Elise Grace, not on a servant's receipt, not on a payroll form, but on the legal line his father had left for her. Leo ordered a protective agreement for Clara and Willow that same afternoon. Independent counsel paid by the estate, secure housing away from Vivian's reach, settlement review for the Harbor Memorial families, and a public oversight board with representatives from the injured port families. Willow was not made into a mascot, not placed in front of reporters, not asked to smile for a story about kindness. Leo told the attorneys her name would remain out of any filing that did not require it. "She did enough," he said. "Adults can carry the rest." The hospital bills Clara had been paying in pieces were transferred to the trust review, not as a gift, but as part of the very compensation fund the hidden page had been designed to protect. Clara's employment record was corrected to show years of unpaid overtime and withheld benefits owed through the estate household. A staff protection policy was drafted before sunset, requiring independent reporting outside the family chain for every Moretti employee. None of it looked like a fairy tale. That was why it felt real. It had signatures, witnesses, deadlines, consequences. It had Vivian losing control without a single raised fist. It had Martin's name written into a referral packet instead of another invoice. It had Nina's statement sealed beside the page she once tried to remove. Near the end, the technician returned the worn hospital envelope to Clara after copying and logging it. Clara held it for a moment, then looked at Willow. Willow opened the flap carefully from the left side, the way her mother always had, and slid the old photocopy back inside its sleeve. Then she took off her crooked blue hair clip and placed it gently on top of the sealed evidence copy of page 7. Just for a second, like a child marking a place in a book. Leo watched her do it and could not speak. Later, when the room had emptied and the rain had softened to a silver mist, Clara and Willow walked out through the front doors of the law office, not the service corridor. Leo walked with them to the lobby. No guards pushed ahead. No one told them where staff should stand. At the glass entrance, Willow paused and looked back at the man who had almost signed away her mother's name. "Your dad was right," she said softly. Leo's throat tightened. "About what?" Willow held her mother's hand and the old envelope both at once. "People can hear better after someone stops the pen." Leo looked down at his silver pen, still lying unused on the conference table behind him, and for the first time that day, the most powerful man in the room understood that truth had not needed his permission to exist. It had only needed him to stop long enough to listen.